Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon, and today we're going to be going over patch 6.2e. So we're just going to go right into the champion changes and everything, since that's all we really ever care about when we're reading these changes. I don't really care about whatever else is going on for the most part. So going right into it, we have Urgot getting changed initially. So his second ability is going to basically get more AD scaling. Generally, I've thought that Urgot's a bit of an underrated champion. I feel like he's a bit clunky to play. He feels a bit weird to play. But for players who actually know how to play him, he's really good. He's a good champion into Fiora, for example, who's one of the best champs in the game right now. So I definitely don't think he'll be bad after this change. I think he's in general a little underrated, and if you like those types of more tanky bruisers, he's not a bad champion at all to carry. Then we have Viego. Viego's getting more AD, and he's getting his third ability, giving him more attack speed by actually like a lot more attack speed, 10% basically at every level, or at every level. So he's getting basically a lot more damage in his kit. Generally, the thing that Viego struggles with is he doesn't have the, like he's really squishy when you're building the crit build, and so if you are not able to get that initial kill, he struggles a lot, and sometimes it can be hard in solo queue when you don't have proper engagement, whatever. But if you're in a coordinated environment, or you have a decent player on your team to engage for you, Viego can be one of the best junglers in the game, and really, really good at carrying. So overall, I think this change will make him nearly a top tier, if not just a straight up top tier jungler. And again, the only issue will be locking him in if you don't have any engage for the most part. After that, we have Xin Zhao getting 6 extra base armor, and then his second ability cooldown is getting reduced at each level. And the duration that they're challenged for, so basically the duration you can like dash longer under them and whatnot, is getting increased by 0.5 seconds. Overall, this change again will make him obviously better into AD comps, and overall, the thing that it really allows him to do is makes him able to skirmish a lot better having more base armor. So let's say he's fighting Vi early game, or a Viego or something on like an early Scuttle, or even early game on a Herald. These types of things he's going to be a lot better at with that additional armor. Just being able to win those 1v1s a bit more, and since that's really what this champion likes to do, and then having the lower cooldown on the W might potentially make it easier to catch people out, and to, you know, just get a bit more DPS off. So overall, I still don't think that this champion is going to be anywhere near the top. However, Xin Zhao is going to be able to do a lot better in those early games, and is a pretty fine champion, pretty average, and whenever the enemy lock in a lot of you know, range champions, Xin Zhao suddenly becomes very, very good. So he's still going to be very similar in that regard. Then we have Pantheon, so we can kind of see a trend with a lot of early game skirmishing junglers getting base stat buffs. So he's getting 6 more base armor and 2 more base magic resist, and then his third ability, the movement speed you gain when you slam your shield, is lasting for an additional second. So again, overall, this champion I think is a good skirmisher. I think it's a pretty strong champion. I think the problem with Pantheon players is they all spam gank and refuse to farm, so they can't snowball properly. Whereas this champion, if you actually path properly and play properly, can get a bunch of ganks off while still maintaining a good amount of gold, and then can snowball really effectively while still being useful in late game due to his stun and his shielding. He's not a good late game champion, but he has uses, the same way that Renekton can still be very useful in a late game because of his stun and tankiness. Pantheon maybe a little less tanky, but still very similar in that regard. So I think that Pantheon, for players who play him properly, is actually quite strong right now, and that this buff will make him, you know, really good. So if you're a good Pantheon player, definitely, I'm sure you're going to be very happy with this update. All right, next up we have Braum, who's getting 30 base health increase. His passive is getting more damage once you reach 4 stacks, and then also after the enemy is stunned, people do bonus basic attack damage, which I didn't even know that that was a thing, but apparently that's a thing, and it's getting higher as well. His first ability is getting 1 second lower cooldown and costing less mana, and then his second ability, which is the one where he dashes to his ally, is getting reduced by 2 seconds per level. So overall, I actually am really surprised that Braum's getting buffed. I think this champion is super strong. He works especially well with stuff like Ashe, Lucian, Ezreal, champions who can proc his passive really easily, the one that stuns once you get 4 attacks. And so because of that, I think this champ's going to be incredibly strong. Like, I think he's going to be one of the best supports in the game, but he's not a carry support. So obviously he's not an engaged support, not a carry support where you can really 1v9 the game. So it's much more of a duo queue champion. But I think some of the best duo queue combos are going to be Ezreal plus Braum, Ashe plus Braum right now. Lucian's going to be solid, and I definitely think this champion is insanely strong. So if you're especially playing duo queue with someone as a support, or you're an ADC player, I highly recommend trying to have this champion as part of your duo lane. Alright, and then they are nerfing my current ban when I play Baron lane, and that's Rumble. So his first ability is getting less base damage, and then also less base damage when he's in the danger zone, which is when he's above 50% you know, heat. And then same with the shield. The shield's getting reduced both at normal base shield and as well the danger zone. So overall, this does just basically make his numbers worse, because he's pretty much a stat checking champion. You know, you run at people, you hope that you can burn them down before they burn you down, and he's going to be a little worse at this now. I still think he's super strong because he's generally still going to have a bunch of damage. His shield is on a super low cooldown, which makes it really easy to spam and avoid any poke in lane. His ultimate's super good for wave clear early on, so it's hard to dive him, and it's obviously extremely valuable in team fights as well. And he's an AP top laner, and there's not too many strong AP top laners right now. So the fact that he is super good means anytime that you need some AP, he's really, really good. However, of course, this does make him a bit worse. I would say he's no longer probably a top 3 Baron laner in the game, but we'll definitely have to see once we get in the patch. But yeah, overall, I still think I'm going to ban this champion because he does counter, you know, he does counter Fiora pretty hard, and I play a lot of Fiora. But overall, a little bit weaker as a champion. All right, then we have Rammus getting a nerf. So Rammus's base AD is going down by 4, and the cooldown of his second ability is going up by 1, and the bonus damage while he is curled into a ball is going down by 10%. Overall, Rammus is a really good counter pick right now anytime the enemy lock up a lot of AD, especially because for some reason low elo players think they should play ADC in every role, which they shouldn't, but they think they should. And Rammus is very good into those types of things, so definitely makes sense that he probably had a really high win rate, since he's probably not the highest pick rate, but when he's picked in situations that he's really good in, when the enemy have a bunch of AD basically, and so they nerfed him because he is quite strong in those situations right now. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I still think he's going to be a counter pick in the same situations he was always a counter pick in. He's just going to be slightly worse in those situations, but you can still pick him for sure whenever you see a bunch of AD, especially a bunch of ADCs on the enemy comp. All right, then moving on to Ashe. So Ashe is getting a nerf. Her first ability is going to get 5% less bonus attack speed when active per level, and then her ultimate's going up by 10 seconds per level in terms of the cooldown. So overall, Ashe getting nerfed. I didn't feel like Ashe was a top tier ADC. I thought she was good, but not great. And I still think that's really going to be the case. I mean, her DPS is going to be lower, obviously. Overall, it's not really a champion I recommend people main necessarily, but it's a really good autofill champ. If you don't know how to play ADC super well, but you're autofill, she's easy to play, she's simple, she has utilities. So I think in that regard, she's still strong. However, I don't think she's going to be anywhere near like a top tier ADC right now. And then we have Varus. So Varus is a champion that everyone tells me is super, super strong. The win rates say is super strong, and I still think this champion sucks. But it makes sense that they're nerfing him because of the win rates and because of the perception. I think this champion generally does really well into players who don't know what they're doing, because a lot of players, like I have viewers frequently who are Master Plus players, or you know, lower too as well, tell me that they don't know what his passive does, and so that they just like walk at him and don't realize that if you let him auto you 3 times and use an ability, he's going to do a lot of damage to you. And people also don't know about his resets in terms of getting more attack speed after kills and whatever. So because of these reasons, the champion is able to pop off and do a lot of crazy things, alongside the fact that Lulu and Meteor are really strong, and those champions work really well with auto attack based ADCs, and he's a champion who has really high attack speed, especially when he gets those kills. So because of all those reasons, again, I don't actually think it's the champion's strength itself, because I think the champion's very easy to shut down due to its low range, low self peel, and lack of mobility, which to me is very, very bad for any auto attack based ADC. And I don't think his lane phase is super strong to be able to counteract that. It's not a weak lane phase, but it's nothing near the best laners in the game, and for that reason, I don't think the champ's strong. Anyways, my rant aside on Varus, he's getting nerfed. 4 less base AD, 0.5% less of the target's max health per level on his stacks per stack, so a lot less damage there, and then also a little bit worse AP scaling on the W passive, which again is where most of his damage comes from, especially with these on-hit builds and these AP builds, which is really what's being played right now. Poke Varus is not really a thing anymore, mostly the auto attack based builds, and so they're nerfing the second ability passive, which is largely where that damage comes from. Or not the passive, the active, but and then the ultimate cooldown is getting reduced by, or is getting going higher actually by 10 seconds per level, so also just not able to ult as much, and his ult cooldown was quite low, which was definitely a good part of him. So overall, I think this champion will be really bad. However, I think in terms of performance in most elos and win rate wise, I think it'll be an average champion, but in my opinion, it will be one of the worst ADCs in the game, but people won't perceive it that way. So that's overall my rant on Varus. Now let's move on to Karma. All right, then we have Karma. Pretty simple. Her shield's getting nerfed. The base shield's getting nerfed by 10 per level, and the Mantra shield is getting nerfed by 20. I think the reason it says nerfed by 20 per level is just because it's 10 for each person. I think that's what it means by like the base shield value. Maybe not, but I think that's what it means. And so basically just a little less shielding on Karma. I think she's a fine support overall. Good carry support, good with poke lanes, like for example Ezreal. Good with Caitlyn, good with just like long range poke, that type of thing. The shield getting nerfed by 10 per level, I really don't think it does much. I don't think it changes this champion standing at all in the meta, and I think it's a good solo queue enchanter to carry, and it's an okay dual queue champion, but definitely more of a solo queue kind of carry champion overall. Then we have Zilean. Zilean base stats, his base health regen is getting nerfed by 4, his base magic resist by 8, and then his cooldowns on his first ability and the damage on the first ability are getting lowered, and then the twisted time flow, which I'm currently looking in my game to see which ability that is, because I don't know Zilean's abilities super well. But apparently I can't spell Zilean, so it's really hard to find them. But either way, the twisted time flow is the second ability, and so that cooldown is getting higher as well. I think I might have said reduced for the first ability, but I mean it's getting higher. And then the base shield value on the second ability is also getting lower. So overall, I did think this champion was like one of the best supports in the game, and he's especially good at countering super aggressive comps that want to dive onto people. So I think this nerf is very significant. Less health regen, less magic resist, all of these different cooldowns. I think the champion will kind of be mediocre now. I don't think it should be too strong after all these nerfs. Normally, I'm not the type of person to say like, oh, a champ was really strong, and then nerfs make them bad. I don't think he's going to be bad, but I do think he's just going to be completely mediocre, average enchanter, nothing too special after this, just a good counter to really aggressive dive comps. And finally, for champions, we have Aurora, whose first and second cast are both going from 35% damage, bonus damage to 32% on her first ability. This makes a lot of sense because Aurora, I don't think is overly strong or broken, but her burst damage is just a bit too absurd. And so nerfing this, bonus damage definitely helps kind of bring that more in line. But she's still a burst mage who needs to kind of, be able to one-shot people. So it makes sense that they're not doing anything crazy. This will probably make her feel really balanced overall. I would say you're still going to get one shot by her when you're a squishy champion, but maybe a little less one shot. Maybe instead of her doing 130% of your health, it'll do like 115% with her burst combo. So I do think she's still balanced overall, but definitely can be really surprising with that burst damage. And I think this is overall a good change. Then we have items. So going into the items, we have Yordle Trap's mark duration is going up by 3 seconds, and the bonus shared gold is going down. So I never really built this item. I'm still never going to build this item. If I'm honest with you, I don't really think this, does a whole lot. So I think the mark duration means that, for an additional 3 seconds, people can grab that additional gold by getting the kill after you CC them. But you get less bonus gold. Again, I really don't think this does anything for me personally. I will not be building this item on any champion ever. I think it sucks because it's a win more item, and I think win more items suck. What I mean by win more item is it's an item that is useful when you're already ahead, because the only time you get value from this is when you're getting a lot of kills. The same way from the AP item that I can't think of, Mage Eyes, right? Mage Eyes. So these types of items, they're just pretty much, yes, I'm winning, I'm getting kills, I'm CCing for my team, and then they get more gold, and so we can snowball harder. But if we play properly, the amount of gold that we got from those kills already would help us snowball enough that we don't need this additional item that doesn't have as good of stats or as good of passive as the other items that would be more useful in more difficult games. Because again, I think I'm going to win a majority of the games I'm already ahead and snowballing in. I'm more worried about winning those games I'm behind in, which is why I think this item sucks, and I don't recommend it. After that, we have Hexdrinker, which is a very OP item. Obviously, Hexdrinker is the component of Mob Malmorius. It's getting going to cost 1,200 gold instead of 1,100, and the overall cost of Maw is going to be the same. You just spend less gold, once you've finished the components. But this means that you can't, spam the Hexdrinkers as quickly. Obviously, you need an additional 100 gold for each of them. I don't really think this changes anything. I still think you're going to build Hexdrinker / Mob Malmortius in the same situations you were before, but obviously it's a little more expensive, so sometimes you might not be able to get it on the same back. And then we have the Cauterize passive to Death Dance getting nerfed a little bit from 32% to 30%, staying the same for range though. Death Dance is a really strong item right now. Really good on bruisers, and I don't think that 2% from this damage conversion ratio changes anything. I still think it's going to be an item you'll build on a majority of bruisers if you need some level of armor, or if you just want to utilize that anti-burst passive really well. And then overall, that's going to be it for the patch, guys. So I do think the patch is overall good. I mean, it's like a B, a B rating in my eyes. It's a fine patch. There's nothing really wrong with it. Nothing crazy. They nerfed and buffed champs, I thought mostly deserved nerfs or buffs a little bit. I mean, Viego getting a buff, and Pantheon maybe not needed, but not surprising. Braum as well. So I guess some weird ones, but nothing crazy. Nothing that I think breaks the game. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.